This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, thank you so much, Parker, and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and seldom is the time that you'll hear me utter the words, "My guest today truly needs no introduction." But today is one of those days. If you're a fan of the mid-'70s pop and rock scene, I would bet serious money that you know at least one of this guy's songs. And if you're a blues fan today, well, pretty much the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pride to welcome our guest, the legendary bluesman, Elvin Bishop. Elvin, thank you so much for your time and for joining me today on Time Signatures. Welcome.
Glad to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you, sir. And we've got a lot of ground to cover here. So let me start the ball rolling. I'd like you to talk about your earliest memories of music.
I grew up on a farm,
Mm-hmm.
Iowa, and we lived on a dirt road. We had an outhouse, no running water, no electricity, and we had a radio that had a battery, a huge battery. I think it was like about 6-sided or 8-sided or something like that. That nothing modern about it, and it would work when the weather was right. And my folks were into the old style of music that was happening then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't pay too much attention to it. And then we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and when I was a young teenager, maybe about the mid-'50s, got into rock and roll, and I liked Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and Elvis and all that. And then I fooled around and found out where all this stuff was coming from, blues.
Yes, sir.
And that's when I lost my mind and got really into music.
Did you have any favorite songs or artists that you just wanted to hear more and more of in those early years?
Yeah, I liked Little Richard a whole lot.
Okay.
A lot better than my folks did.
I can imagine. Now, you talked about the blues. Let's talk about the baptism, man. Where did that start for you? And how long did it take you to get fully immersed in the genre?
Yeah, it took about 30 seconds. I used to have this big old radio, which was a huge thing, about this tall combination radio and record player. It was, in those days, you know, it was more like a piece of furniture than a convenient little way to listen to music, you know.
Right.
I remember listening to, you know, I had a little hobby. I would listen to all the, see how many different stations I could get. And after midnight in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all the local stuff shut down. And then the 50,000 watts from different places across the country would come in. And one night I was fooling around and I got WLAC in Nashville.
Oh, wow.
And I heard Jimmy Reed doing Honest I Do. I don't know what year it was, but the static was crackling and the tubes were glowing. I wasn't supposed to be up that late at night, you know, and that harmonica came cutting through, you know, so soulful and everything. And I said, "Oh man, that's it. I'm gone."
Now, on the heels of that awakening, Elvin, you ended up traveling to Chicago. I want to talk about that trip just a little bit. What year was it? How old were you? And what caused you to make that trip in the first place?
I wasn't a very good student, but I was a good test taker. And I won this National Merit Scholarship, which was, you know, a big deal at the time.
Sure.
And I could go basically anywhere I wanted to. And I said, I want to go to Chicago because I knew that's where blues was.
Right.
And because all the heavy classic blues guys were alive and well then in Chicago. Muddy and Wolf and all those people, Otis Rush, all of them. And so I ended up going there. I didn't know whether to go to University of Chicago or Northwestern. Those are the only two universities that I knew of that were in Chicago.
Hmm.
Just by a hell of a big piece of good luck that I ended up going to the University of Chicago because it was located in this place called Hyde Park, which is a little island in the middle of the uh, South Side ghetto, And man, within a week or two, I was down at Pepper's Lounge at 43rd and Vincennes, listening to this band, and it was Muddy Waters, James
Wow.
Cotton, Otis Spann, Willie Big Eye Smith, and a bass player, and Pat Hare, a great guitar player. And I just said, "Oh man." I had made friends with all the black dudes that worked in the cafeteria, and they were all blues fans. And they'd take me down there, and I said, "Man, these blues bands are great." I thought they were all going to be like that, but I got to hear a lot of great. Gradually got into the scene in Chicago, and it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Well, I caught one of your interviews and you talked about being in Chicago your first or second day, and you stumbled upon a significant part of Chicago's blues scene, another legend, Paul Butterfield. I have to hear this story from you.
Oh, that's you just told it. Uh, I was walking around the neighborhood uh, around the university just to see what was going on, and I seen this guy. It was a white guy drinking a quart of beer and playing blues on a guitar, sitting on some steps, in front of an apartment building. I,
Wow.
I said, "Well, this has got to be my type of guy." I went over, and made friends with him, and started up talking. It was Butterfield. He didn't even play harmonica yet, and at some point, he picked up the harmonica, and within about 6 months, he just became great. He was a natural uh,
Wow.
genius on the instrument.
Now, how long after you met Paul did you actually become part of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band? And that had to be an incredibly heady time playing with Butterfield, Bloomfield, Sam Lay, and the rest. Yeah.
Well, we covered a lot of ground that hadn't been explored before. I'll tell you that. Uh, it was about 3 or 4 years. I played with a lot of different bands before I got with Butterfield, and
Okay.
it was like I was on fire for the music. So I was just practicing 24 hours a day and out jamming, and I played in all kinds of bands. We had this one band called the Southside Olympic Blues Team. That was whoever we could round up if somebody got a gig. And the Salt and Pepper Shakers. And I played with some of the old classic Chicago guys, or even before Chicago, what we consider Chicago blues now. J.T. Brown's a saxophone player,
Wow.
and did gigs with oh, a lot of the guys. And Chicago was like a big school for learning blues because you played from 9 o'clock in the evening till 4 in the morning,
Wow.
45 on and 15 off. And that's a lot of time. And even the biggest stars like Muddy or anyone are glad about 2 o'clock in the morning to see somebody coming to eat up some of that time for them. And that made it good for young musicians because if you're serious about the music and you knew that these jamming opportunities were going to be happening all over the city, you would sit and learn some of these guys' tunes so you could make a good showing, because
Yes, sir.
it was kind of like a half-ass employment agency. And man, things were just popping.
Now you talked about, rubbing elbows with some of the greats, Hound Dog Taylor, Otis Rush, Muddy, Magic Sam, just to name a few. Any memorable moments that you want to share from those early days?
Mm. Well, I remember the first time I saw Magic Sam. He was playing in a big place, a dance hall type of place, and I was about 17 at the time. And I look back and I say, man, I was pretty fearless in those days. I would, and because I was the only white guy in the crowd most of the time, and I went in and went back in the back room and introduced myself to Magic Sam, and he was real nice and let me hang around the dressing room and everything. But then the cop, the security, he said, "How old are you?" And I said, 21. He said, "Let me see your ID." He kicked me out. So I went out the
Oh,
back and I went around, came in the front door again. And about the third time, he finally said, "Well, okay, you can stay, but don't start up no shit."
yeah. You eventually broke out on your own. In 1975, you released the album "Strutting My Stuff." Now, I'm assuming that you have some good exposure from the album, and then lightning struck in 1976 with the release of a single you referred to as an accident of sorts. An accident, by the way, that resulted in making Elvin Bishop truly a household name. How about some details on that one?
You're talking about fooled around and fell in love.
Yes, sir.
I used to hang out with this guy in San Francisco. I've always been lucky to have real good musicians with me and great people to work with. And this guy was a good example. And this friend of mine was named Gideon Daniels, and he was the son of a preacher. And his dream was to have sort of a rainbow type of gospel group. And he'd go through, he had like a Japanese singer and a Filipino guy and a white guy playing piano and like that. And he'd go through the South and make trips through the South and look for good singers.
Oh, wow.
And he came to Cairo, Georgia, and he found this guy named Mickey Thomas. And he liked him. He hired him, brought him to San Francisco, and we got to hanging out together. And at some point, he joined my band. He was a great singer. Is a great singer still.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's still got that young sounding voice. It's amazing. He hasn't lost a thing. Um, so we were doing a record in Miami, I think, with it was produced by this guy. What was his Simzik, Bill Simzik.
Okay.
He's the guy that produced my one and only hit and also BB King's one and only hit.
Wow.
He also produced Thrill Is Gone. And we had, I think, maybe 11 tunes cut, and they were all pretty good. And he said, we need one more to fill things out. The time, He said, what do you got laying around? And I said, what about this tune right here? It's a tune that I'd tried to get 3 or 4 other singers to sing with me, but nobody seemed to care much about it. So we cut a track and it came out real good. And I went in there and I sort of demoed it up for the producer, but my voice didn't you're hearing my voice now. It ain't Peter Thomas has got a voice that he can sing the phone book, for you and you'll get thrilled.
Yeah.
I said, no, this ain't butter and the biscuit. I wonder if I could get Mickey to give it a shot. He says, okay. And he went in and did it and he killed it. But In a way, it's a matter of odds. I've written hundreds of tunes, and I tried real hard on all of them and did the best I could. And if you throw enough stuff up against the wall, something's going to stick after a while. I think that's just what happened.
Well, isn't it kind of cool that, there's a lot of stories just like this out there in the music world where lightning in a bottle has been captured accidentally, as you called this an accident. It was just one of those things. It was happenstance, but it wasn't, as you have so poignantly pointed out, was not just the song. It was the guy singing it that really pushed it over the top. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's that's you go back and listen to that record, and there's so many things that have to happen right. Like the piano player was on that day.
yep,
Um, Johnny V, the other guitar player, was really on. He did some really unusual stuff on it, and it all fell together just right.
yeah.
So,
As I was preparing for this interview today, I actually listened to your extended, oh gosh, what's it called? Extended, oh gosh, the album you cut with Mickey, the
mhm,
extended versions, I
mhm.
guess. And that song came on, and it takes me right back to the years, because I was 10 years old when that came out. And to hear that again with fresh ears, knowing the story and knowing who's singing it, and it's just a wonderful. It's a rite of passage, I guess, for people that were growing up in that era to know that song.
Yeah, uh, those in those days, things were set up better for new artists than they are now because there weren't a million different streaming sources.
Yeah.
For music to be heard. There was basically one source, and that was the radio. And if you got in with the radio, that was it.
Yep.
So that was lucky.
Well, as we turn the page here, now more than 50 years in the business, you've become somewhat of an elder statesman in the blues, haven't you? How does that fit you, Elvin?
Elder as hell. That's right. Uh, man, you did your homework. What was the
I'm
question?
trying.
What was the
No,
question?
well, I'm just wondering how the title elder statesman fits with you. There's a lot of people that give you a lot of kudos and respect the hell out of you because of your body of work and the years that you've put in. How does that fit you?
Uh, well, I've been at it for 60 some years and trying hard all that time. So I appreciate being recognized.
Yes, sir. Well, are you finding that the new generation of blues artists are seeking counsel from yourself and others who have well more than paid their price for these decades?
Some of them do, yeah.
And what kind of advice do you give them when they come to you?
Uh, I don't give out too much advice. I just kind of tell them what I know or what happened to me, and wish them well. That's about it.
Okay. Now, I have to tell you, and I was stumbling over the title earlier here. Extended Versions is the album that I was referring to. And of course, I love the work that you released with fellow bluesman Charlie Musselwhite. 100 Years of Blues is just flat out fun, Alvin. So what's next for you? What's going on now? I know you tour a little bit.
Yeah, I just talked to Muscle this morning a little bit, and some gigs are coming in for this summer. We're doing quite a few. So it's like that. I basically the romance of travel has worn off on me. I don't really enjoy that part so much, and I'm at a place now where I live in a real nice place, and I have a beautiful wife and a nice daughter, and just had my first grandkid, and
Hey,
yeah, and I don't go looking for gigs. If they call me, and if it's a good deal, I'll go.
Sure,
But
sure.
I don't try to stir it up or anything. I'm just as happy staying home. But I always enjoy the musical part and getting together with the people. It's just getting there and getting back is what you know. It's
Well, I
got
have
to.
to go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say nothing important.
Okay. Well, it's all important, but I have to ask you, from one grandfather to another, because I just became a grandfather within the last year and a half. What's that like for you?
Oh, it's great. It's kind of a bigger thing than you would think it. When than you would think it is. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
little kids, you can't beat them.
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna see my grandson tonight, and I'm also going to see my great niece tonight because it's my nephew's birthday. Um, but I have to tell you, something about looking at what your child created and holding them for the first time and just letting them your heart around wrap their heart around your finger. And every time I see that little boy, he is just the coolest creation I've ever seen in my life. And I never thought I could fall more in love than I did with my kids, but I did.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Well, Elvin, make no mistake, history is going to record that Elvin Bishop was among those at the forefront of the modern blues movement and helped keep it alive for future generations. Now, as we get close to the close of this interview, what advice would you like to give to the next generation? What charge can you send them away with?
I don't know. Listen to the old masters, and that'll help you get your vocabulary and your licks together. And then the world don't need another Stormy Monday, and it don't need another Got My Mojo Working. It needs something based on your experience, and that's all I can say.
Very good. And finally, where can we learn about Elvin Bishop? Maybe buy some albums, some merchandise, find your tour dates, or maybe book you for a gig. And they better make it a good offer because you don't have to.
There you go. My booking agent is the Curlin Agency, a guy named Jack Randall, and he's real cool. Kurland. It's in Boston. And I got a website. It's called Elvin Bishop Music. It used to be called Elvin Bishop, but then somebody bought that name up when I wasn't looking
Oh boy.
and tried to blackmail me for a bunch of money. And I said, "Oh hell, just go ahead and do what you're going to do." So they changed the name of the website to bonemywife.com.
Oh my Lord. Wow.
So it's Elvin Bishop Music now.
If we'll put that one up, we'll make sure we get it right, okay?
Yeah.
Well, Elvin Bishop, it has indeed been a pleasure and an honor to have you here today. I want to thank you so much for joining me on Time Signatures and much continued success as you go into 2025.
Thanks a million. Appreciate it. Nice to be with you.
Well, I appreciate you too, sir. Now, before we wrap up today, please allow me to take a moment to tell you all about the Blues Archive at the University of Mississippi. Time Signatures is proud to have been accepted to the archive. In fact, we're the only currently produced podcast housed there. Now, if you happen to visit Oxford, Mississippi, you can see all sorts of great blues items, including a private collection of albums and wax cylinders that were once the property of the late B.B. King. In fact, his donation back in 1982 was a catalyst for starting the archive, which opened officially in 1984. Now, donations are welcome. We're going to put a link right here on the episode. And to learn more, please look at the information on this episode for the link. We appreciate your time. And that concludes this episode of Time Signatures. My thanks once again to Elvin Bishop, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, my friends.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.